Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Hey, everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio. Today, we're excited to chat with author Kelly Vincent about her trilogy. She's got a book series called The Art of Being Ugly. The third one comes out August 13th, 2024, and it is called Ugliest. Yeah, we're getting ugly today. All right, sounds good to me. You can go to her website, kellyvincent.net, and the book is available to order online now, and then you'll get it for the 13th. So, welcome, Kelly. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
So give us an overview of the series. So there's three books, right? This is the third and final.
It's
Man,
it's the final core book. I'm considering writing kind of like a follow-up novella maybe.
cool.
But I'm not certain about that. I originally did plan more books, but I think the arc of the series really, I think this book is a good place to end for the core series. So, the series is about Nick, who is a agender teen. In the beginning, they live in a small town in Oklahoma where it's very conservative and
Mhm.
they're treated very poorly, bullied, and just very confused about gender, but not really understanding the options out there. So they're very committed to art and they love
Mhm.
art. So that's kind of their main, activity in the book. But in the first book, it's a lot just about learning about what is out there in terms of knowledge about gender identity and trying to figure out a solution to the problem of being in a place where Nick is hated.
Mm.
So that's kind of what that book is, and that's the one that's actually quite personal to me. It's basically kind of a thought experiment of me imagining myself growing up nowadays rather than the 80s and 90s when we
Mm.
didn't understand gender
Everything was hush
identity,
hushed. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so I now use they them pronouns and identify as agender, but when I started the series, I didn't, and part of writing the series kind of
Wow.
helped me come to that. So, but anyways, in the second book, Nick manages to get into a boarding school where they eventually do come out as agender. I'm not really giving anything away here, but in the first book, they're identifying as gender nonconforming, and so that second book is they finally find their people and it's the first time and they're just like,
Yay.
it's a lot to handle, but then there's some drama, not like, just friendship is hard sometimes and but it's also really rewarding. And so Nick really grows a lot in that second book and starts to kind of see things a little differently in terms of the bullying and how it
Yeah.
wasn't everybody, it was some people, and starting to kind of realize that. And then but I also kind of start showing the anti-LGBTQ legislation that's coming out in red states mostly, and that kind of comes into play at the end of that book. But the third book is all about Nick and their friends becoming activists
Mm.
for LGBTQ rights, and it is consequently like a very political book, and it's not something I normally do, but I mean, there's just really no way to get around how
Well, we're
political.
kind of running out of time on things these days on just about all levels,
Yeah,
so it is. But I think this is important. So it's a young adult novel series, right? A
yes,
series of novels. But I think it's good timing because I actually don't think everybody understands how to approach, do we say they, their, how, what,
mhm,
it's very confusing to people. And so then if it's confusing and they don't take the time to understand it, then anger and, this is just
mhm,
stupid kind of, right? So
yeah,
I think it's important to have these conversations. It's important to have books, especially for the kids. I mean, being a teen is not easy, period. Let's
yeah,
just
it really
get, I
is.
mean, it's not easy,
I absolutely agree with that. I have a lot of empathy for teenagers, and things
especially
are
now. Yeah.
in some ways better, in some ways a lot worse. Social media is a huge
Mm,
interesting thing. A lot of it is bad for teens, but there are also positives about it for
mm,
teens. But
yeah.
one of the things I found with this series is that there are a fair number of adults who read it, and I get a lot of feedback from adults who are like, I think I understand this now. And I think it really does because we're going into Nick's head so deeply. We see Nick's journey and understanding themselves, but also their friends, and just the whole gender question is it's hard to understand unless you have experienced it or know someone.
Hmm.
And I feel like this book does actually sort of explain things without it being the whole point. I mean, it's really still an entertaining story about um,
Yeah.
a teenage artist, and really coming into their own in a really powerful way.
Mm.
And the third book I think is really uplifting, which is not necessarily true for the first two. I mean, they're not like a downer book, but I mean, I think they just get progressively
Well,
more.
you show the difficulties,
Yeah.
and if a kid is going through that, which there's tons of them, right? Thousands
Mhm.
around the world. um your identity, you're giving them identity. It's a whole other identity, right?
Yeah,
They're being able to, like, oh, somebody knows what I'm going through. and
exactly.
and a book is private. Like, if you go
Mhm.
watch a movie with friends and maybe you have friends in there that don't get it,
Mhm.
that's a little difficult. But a book is yours and yours alone, your
Yeah,
thoughts, your ideas. You build the character in your mind along with the author. It's co-creative, but you can take that understanding yourself, and no one can. I mean, it's an escape, but it's also something that you don't feel alone. And I
yeah,
think that, depending, I mean, you were talking about Oklahoma, and you lived in Oklahoma, right?
yeah. I grew up there.
Yeah, yeah, that could, it could be difficult. I'm just
It,
saying.
it's a very, very red state. Very.
It shouldn't even be that way, though, like whether it's red or blue or whatever.
It
I
shouldn't,
just
but
It
it
is.
is, and I mean that's that kind of rushed this book out because I wanted it to come out before the election,
Yeah.
because it's not just the red states, it's the whole country that we need to. um
Shift.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. So no, no, I mean, it is. I'm all fine with all of this because I think things are getting a little crazy out there, and I don't know how much better they're going to get, or it could go deeply off the deep end and some crazy. Yeah.
I have
So,
big concerns, but
oh,
I'm
I think
hopeful
we
that
all do. I think.
we can just do
Uh,
what we need to do. It's possible. I'm just scared.
well, at the end of the day, no matter what, right? You band together with those of the same ilk, right? And you console and move forward. And I think that's what I'm saying about a book series for kids right now, teens, I don't even call them kids, is really helpful. I mean, even going to college, things happen in colleges, right?
Mm.
Look what's been going on.
Yeah,
So I think that's also another thing about it prepares you. And I think adults should read young adult books a lot of
yeah.
times so they
I
have an
started reading
insight.
it and personally just enjoy. I think I love the fact about teenagers, especially older teenagers, is that they're at this really pivotal point in their lives where the things they do really do matter, that the choices they make have consequences now. That's not quite as true when you're 10 or
Mhm.
11.
Mhm.
Um, but also they can still almost do anything. Almost anything is
Mhm.
possible. And so it's interesting to see like I love to write about like high achieving teens because I just think that's cool. But just teens even who don't even know
That's
exactly what they're
inspiring.
doing, it's starting to matter. And so
Mm.
I think it's just kind of an exciting time to write about
And Nick
personally.
being an artist, that's also hard. That's not
Yeah.
an easy thing, because
Yeah.
being an artist or a writer, as you know, that is not an easy path to go on. And everybody's like, no, you need to be a doctor, you need to make this kind of money. You know what I mean? So that's
Yeah.
also another part of it. I want to know too, because you've lived in Oklahoma and also Scotland, right? Is it different over there for kids now going through the gender identity? Do you think it's easier, worse, or the same as here?
Okay, so I really can't speak to that
Okay.
because it's been 20 years since I was there.
Oh, okay.
But I
Okay,
am actually
sure.
going in a week back to
Oh,
the
okay.
UK
Well,
for
good
a short
timing for you to
visit.
be on the show.
Yeah, so I'm excited to go back, but what I found going from Oklahoma to Glasgow is that it was a completely different world. And they weren't constantly judging me. I mean, they would include me in things where that never happened in Oklahoma. And it
Okay.
was just a totally different experience where I just kind of felt like at the time, and this was I was in like 25-ish, I kind of felt like in Oklahoma, because I went to college there too. So I was just basically there for most of my young years. Um, it's like people only wanted to be friends with you if they could get something out of you, if it would earn them something,
Mhm.
maybe status for being friends with this person or potentially dating or whatever it is. And I was never considered a desirable person. And,
Okay.
that's how it felt. And in Glasgow, nobody cared. They weren't trying to get something out of it. They were
Mm.
just like, oh, you're in our class, come have coffee with us. And that was so radically new
Mm.
that I was just like, but also Glasgow's very down to earth um and I loved it. And I went and did a master's in Edinburgh as well, but I
Oh,
tried to
cool.
stay there and I just wasn't able to make it happen. But Glasgow's still my favorite place I've ever lived. And I've lived a few different places.
Yeah, me
And I
too.
think that, probably I've kind of learned, and partially through writing this series actually, is that, Oklahoma isn't as bad as I thought it was. It still has a lot of problems, but there are a lot of good people there. And I think I struggled to understand that until I wrote this
Mm.
series. Not everybody's a bully. A
No.
lot of people are just keeping their head down, trying to stay out of, bullies'
Yeah.
way or whatever. And there's a lot of good people. And I mean, like, even now in response to a lot of the hate and the anti-LGBTQ legislation, there's people fighting back. So, and I think so I think I was a little hard on Oklahoma for a lot of my time. I mean, in terms
It
of
takes time, but I mean, if you've gone through something, then that's how you feel at that point, right?
exactly. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of I even have Nick kind of go through this realization in the second book, realizing it wasn't everybody that made them feel
See,
the way.
that's really cool though to have this growth, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
it was
mm,
yeah.
what you can feel when you feel, I mean, I went to 16 schools all over the place, all around the world. And I graduated high school in South Africa. And definitely, if you're gay, half of my friends were gay, and you just, I mean, it was like the lock and key. You don't even talk about it,
Yeah, it's
even amongst
dangerous.
friends, because you're going to get beaten up.
Hmm.
Really, it was not. But now a lot has changed. I mean, I
Yeah.
see my high school friends and their kids. I mean, it's like they can identify with whatever they want to be, and we just go. She goes, my one friend's, son's like, she's a nobody knows and nobody cares, not in
Yeah.
a not caring sense. It
Right. No,
just
I know.
doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
nobody's bothered by it. It's just
Right. I
you
think,
do you.
yeah. What I honestly, all the terminologies and stuff, I'm like, I'm messing up everywhere and I don't mean to.
Yeah,
It's
no, it,
hard.
it is difficult. And I have non-binary friends and I still get their pronouns wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, it's all, I do not want to be a cis. I hate that word.
yeah.
I don't, because in South Africa, cis means you.
Mm.
So when you go, oh, cis, that means, oh, gross. And so now here I get to be called a cis, and I don't want to be a cis.
Well, you
I don't
can
want to
say
be
the
an
whole
you,
word. You could just say cisgender and
but
then it's
still
a
it's
different word.
cis. It's, I don't want to be cis. But then there's a whole bunch going, yeah, well, you all suck anyway, so we're going to call you cis. but, but the reality is, who really cares about who wants to be what they are and
I
what
mean,
they
that's
feel like?
yeah.
Really, I mean, it
What I
really is
really
about
feel
the
is that gender
person.
shouldn't factor into so many things. Like, I don't need the cashier at the grocery store to know that I'm
No,
non-binary. I don't need gender to enter into that exchange in any way.
I don't think it
But
should be part of any of it. I don't
it,
care.
it shouldn't be. It's in everything. We're so trained to like instantly judge somebody's gender the second we meet them. And
Yeah.
I do it too, and I don't want to, but it's so ingrained in our
It's all
society.
those little boxes we have to check.
Yeah,
Are
and I
you
mean, I want
Caucasian?
that to
Are you
stop.
Asian? Are you mixed? Yes, I'm
Yes.
a mutt. Yeah. Why can't we just put mutt?
Yeah.
but that,
Why
but
can't we
that,
just all be American
what, or just, or
or
not
whatever we
even that.
are?
Yeah,
Just
whatever it is, right? That's
yeah,
doesn't even, but it just is who you are as an individual, your name, and that's it.
yeah,
Doesn't really matter because it also changes, I think, as you grow as a kid, you
definitely,
start to
definitely.
learn, and then you go, what? I mean, I think it was a hard part going, are you gay or not? Oh, are you lesbian or not? And then, oh, gay. One time you can say, I don't like the word queer because that just means, oh, you're weird. I don't like that. So queer and cis need to change. I'm sorry. I just would like to change legislation. Thank you. Verbal legislation. Can we just change that? Because queer is just, it's not.
Yeah, it's definitely been reclaimed. And although actually apparently that word was even used in the 1800s.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
maybe it's been
yeah.
around. But yeah, it does have like different meanings. And I mean, this is a lot of times people, groups have tried to reclaim derogatory terms. And And it's hard for some people because those derogatory meanings still stick around.
Yeah,
So
there's it to me, yeah, it's I just think people should be known as who they are as a individual. Like, are they
yeah,
kind? What do they do for a career? Who are you as an individual? You
yeah.
know, and change your name if you want. Change, do whatever you want to do. I don't care how you dress. But I think for kids, it was like, okay, now if you're gay, oh my, that's a big deal in the family. Still just that. But
Mhm.
then if it's both, oh, if you're bi, I don't understand. And then if it's now it starts getting to murky waters, and that's where for kids it's hard. And if the parents aren't supportive or the
Mm,
family, that is difficult. And then you go to school and oh boy, can we all just be homeschooled? Maybe you don't want to be
yeah.
homeschooled either, right? So it's kind of this
Yeah, I think I've kind of come to
hard.
realize that a lot of it, because I've experienced a lot of positive benefits from realizing that I'm agender. Um, Mostly just mental health things, like finally not feeling like a failure as a human and some other just terrible
Oh,
feelings that come from not understanding it. And I sort of was freed from that.
cool.
Um, and and I didn't really expect that, but I really feel like there are a lot of people out there, especially kids, but not only kids, who probably are struggling with gender, but aren't in a safe place to come
Right,
out, right?
right. And then and
But
not
what I've
yeah.
realized is that even just the understanding yourself, learning about the idea that you might be non-binary in some way, um, learning that and recognizing that about yourself, I think can still free you from a lot of the mental turmoil that comes
Mhm.
from being uncertain about your gender.
And understanding that that is a possibility, right? Because
Yes.
it's all been shushed.
Yeah.
In the dark ages, we were actually pretty better in some of these
Yeah, in a
things.
lot of ways, it's true. Like a lot of these things that are stigma now weren't
Yeah, it's as
always.
we got all prissy, um, but purity and all that. But at the same time, like the bullying and things like that, I think you're really right about understanding. But I also think that a lot of adults have shunned, they don't quite understand what's going on and shunned it. And so they've been living very miserable lives
Mhm,
because there isn't this conversation. And then politics doesn't help anything. Everyone starts arguing about it.
mhm.
I mean, the bathroom situation, all of that kind of thing, like public restrooms, what should they be? I mean, this now becomes this big deal. And it's, and it tends to be everyone thinks that this is all sex oriented
Yeah.
versus gender. Does that make sense to you? Like,
It has
so,
nothing gender has nothing to do with sexuality.
but
I
that's where
mean,
the
it
confusion
it
comes.
factors in terms of the words we use to describe it, and there's actually I'm still trying to figure out, like, what a non-binary person, they can't be gay or straight. What would that mean? Would gay mean they
Right.
only date non-binary people and straight means they date people who aren't non-binary? That doesn't make any sense. So I've seen a couple things, but nothing has stayed in my head in terms of like what I would call myself. And even when I'm filling out, sometimes forms for very progressive things that are very inclusive and have genderqueer as an option and other things, they still only list gay and straight for sexuality. And it's like,
Not
these
even
are
lesbian.
like, yeah. And
No
so like
bi.
for
Can't
me,
be
I've
bi.
only ever really been attracted to males. So what do I say? I mean, there should be a term for that. And I've seen something that involves the word like philo and mask, I think, but I can't remember exactly what it is. So I mean, and that would be
What?
the way of doing it. This is what I'm attracted to. And but a lot of people who are non-binary, I think, are very open to different things and maybe, pansexual or any term that sort of
Mhm.
means almost anybody. So, it's kind of like, who cares so
Is
much?
it?
Like,
It's about love at the end of the day too, and what
exactly,
you
like,
feel like. I mean, I think people have a hard time understanding people dressing in different clothes. I
mhm.
mean, that's also a big deal. But I really don't care. I mean,
I mean, what is somebody else doing have any impact on you or your life? And this is the thing that just drives me crazy with a lot of these laws and rules. I mean, just like, you can live your life the way you want to live your
mm,
life. Just let me live my life. I'm
it's
not, I mean, they
yeah.
they act like trans people are like recruiting people. That is just so far
Well,
from the truth.
it's almost like okay, if you Okay, so I have a friend, a lesbian friend, who, she's had a few guy incidences in her life, and she's like, yeah, I drank a little too much, and he had nice long hair, So I was like, okay, whatever, but and we used to be musical partners, and so then, like, I remember playing in lesbian bars, right? And the lesbians just looked at me. I'm not listening to you. I'm only listening to the lesbian. It was like it was funny because the culture was so different. And gay guys in
Mm,
the lesbian bar, that didn't really work unless you knew it was just a very interesting thing. And I didn't care. I just didn't care who I was around so long as they were fun.
yeah.
Um, but I remember this whole thing talking about this, and she's like, no, people don't understand, and there's um the bullying is hard. She's in a small town,
Hmm.
and it was like her brother, the very religious background of her family. Her brother would not let her hang out with her niece and nephews, especially if they were younger. She would take them on hikes and stuff. No, because then something, it's like if you touch them, if you like, they would get almost treated like a pedophile in a way.
Yeah.
And it was like if it may rub off onto them. It was
Yeah.
almost like you had COVID, you
Yeah.
know?
It is, it's like the way HIV was also regarded that
Yeah.
way.
Oh,
That
see, that
it's, I
really
mean, and of
did
course that is,
damage.
of course, is contagious, but not
Yeah.
just through casual,
Yeah.
mixing in a classroom or whatever. And I mean, but this whole, your point about there being such a connection in so many people's minds between gender and sexuality. I mean, a lot of the laws that are, I think it's in Florida, there was a law, and this
Of
may be in more
course.
than one
Of
place, but
course. I'm just going, of
that, yeah,
course.
I
I
mean,
don't
it
even know
always
what you're going
starts
to
in
say. I'm just
Florida.
going, it's okay.
But
Of course.
they if a trans person goes into the bathroom that doesn't match the birth or the gender they were assigned at birth, and there is a minor in there, they have committed a crime and will be listed as a sex offender. And I don't think this law has become a law yet, but it was proposed.
Hmm.
That's, I mean, that's absurd. Like that, they're in the bathroom washing their hands, and that's not a sex crime. Like, how is that anything? And just because this person walks in and they're 15, I mean, it's just like they're just criminalizing
Yeah, well, they want
identity.
that to be. I mean, look at the whole don't ask, don't tell, all of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, right? And then what is this bill about don't say gay? What is that about?
It's just, like people can't in schools, instructors can't can't talk about being gay. They can't talk to students about it. Students can't talk about it amongst themselves. It's just
Wow, so just
like
shut
a gay
everybody off.
teacher is not allowed to have a picture of their spouse, for instance, on their desk because you're not supposed to talk about it. It's just hate. It's all hate. I mean,
Well,
like,
okay, so going back to your book with Nick, right? He's an
mhm,
artist. So then of course that's a whole other, oh, you're an artist, you're one of those types. So I love that you do that. But him being 17 and ugliest, right? You're at that age, right on the cusp of being able to vote. So do you
yeah.
think that did you set that up for that reason too? That it's like
Well,
getting them to prepare to be to understand that importance of not, putting your head in the sand because you want
mhm,
to,
yeah,
especially if you're being bullied. Sometimes you just want to cower, and
yeah,
there's way you have to learn how to handle.
yeah. So Nick and their friends, they're all, well, three of them are juniors, one is a senior, and the senior does turn 18 during the book. But we don't really talk, I don't really talk much about them voting. I didn't really think that much about it actually. And I kind of wish I had at least mentioned that Mac, who's the senior, would actually be able to vote. But in the videos they make talking about LGBTQ rights, they implore viewers to vote if possible, and if not, talk to their people in their lives to vote. I mean, they do specifically talk about the power of voting and how important it is. And I mean, but they're just not going to be there in time for the, well, and actually they actually will be 18 by the time this election comes around, because that book was actually set
Okay.
last year. So
Okay.
I don't really address it except this idea that it's important to get involved and these
Mm-hmm.
things really matter, and you can't just stand by and expect things to not get worse,
Mm.
basically. So it is about being, an activist. It really is, and about getting involved. And
And
so,
how to be one to be effective,
mm,
because it's
yeah.
emotional, right? Because you wear your
Mhm.
heart on the sleeve, and then how to do it effectively when people are actually being really cruel. And that's
Yeah.
the reality. So it's bullying is happening on all age levels
Mhm.
here, I
It
think.
is. Yeah. It's really challenging.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, and but to be effective and to still stand up, that's hard. And I think that's where, books and music and film really help. The arts are
yeah.
like a solace.
I am like super convinced that reading the right stuff, which means not reading stuff that doesn't go deep, but reading anything that goes deep into character is the best way to learn about other people
Mm,
because you experience things they're experiencing. And as long as you're open to listening to what they're telling you, even if it's fiction, then you can learn that stuff.
hmm
And I mean, because it's so hard, there's a lot of things about white privilege that a lot of people really struggle to understand. But if you read books, and there's a lot of good YA out there about Black people,
hmm
and I read a lot of it actually. I enjoy stories about like people who are different from me, so I read lots of kind of different
hmm
kinds of things, and I feel like I understand things that I didn't understand before. And it's not like you become an expert on it, but I mean, you're like, oh, I thought this, but they think this, they interpret that this way. And I'm like, that kind of makes sense. I think I get it now. And
Okay.
I think that like people who read contemporary, I guess, I mean, you can get it from genre too, but in contemporary, it's usually focused almost entirely on characters.
hmm
And so I really think that is incredibly powerful for learning about how other people experience life. Um, and obviously, this is why authenticity is important, which is why there's such a push for having Black people write books about Black people, not have white authors write about Black people and be like, oh,
Yeah.
look, we're being diverse. Have, the own voices movement was a big deal. And I mean, they've come to realize that's a little limiting in terms of being very black and white. Like it is possible for one person to write a story that is about different types of experiences.
Right.
It's just a matter of doing your research. There's a whole thing in writing now that I think is actually fairly new called sensitivity reading.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
you have your, and I actually use two Black sensitivity readers because there's a Black character in Ugliest that where race comes into part of their activism. It's not the focus, but it's like it's a part of his life. He can't avoid that aspect of it. So anyway, so and I actually had pretty good feedback from them because of all that reading I had done and the perspective I had come to understand.
hmm
Um, I mean, it wasn't perfect, but I was able to fix everything with, fairly minimal
Yeah.
changes. And I was really proud of that actually, but that entirely came from reading
I
fiction.
think, but that's the thing. Like I always say, Wanda Sykes is, she's a spitfire of a comedian, right? And being a black lesbian, you're in trouble. You're so, I mean, you're already a woman, then you're a lesbian, then you're black, but then there's a lot more that goes on that we don't even know about right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, the sensitivity part is important, and then people don't even like the word sensitivity because that just means
Yeah.
you're being a baby and
Yeah.
over
It's
emotional
just, yeah.
and yeah but that's the truth, so it's really hard to balance all of that out,
You have to
where
be open to it and you have to realize that your experiences are limited by a lot of factors, including race, gender, social class, location. I mean,
hmm
I just like for anybody who from Oklahoma, even, people who are comfortable in their skin in every possible way, when they go to Scotland and they're in a major city like Glasgow, the experience is just different. I mean, there were so many little things about going to the UK that were like disconcerting. And one of them was it was really hard to find ice trays because I like ice. And they just don't use a lot of ice there. So even
yeah.
stupid things like that, that doesn't matter.
But that's
But
that's
then,
more,
like I
yeah,
said,
but
for me,
cultural,
their
yes.
attitude towards people you were meeting just really felt different. And,
hmm
so there's like all these little things, and some of them are kind of funny, like in Scotland, they call underwear pants. So one time I had a part-time job, and one time I was talking about ironing my pants to go to work, and they were like, "Well, what kind of job do you have?" And so, a lot of it's fun, but your point is you're still limited by
What
what
you
your
know.
experiences have been in.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and the only way to change that is to learn about other people's experiences, either
Well,
by
yeah, when I lived in Kenya, I went to school as a kid. Like I was raised in Africa, Kenya,
Mhm.
England, South Africa. Did go to Scotland, Wales, all of that too. And I went to Snow White Nursery School, which was a multiracial school. It was run by Indians from India, just to be clear on that. And then there were some black kids, and there were different tribes, and I was the token white kid, and none of them had seen white people pretty much where we were. And here I come walking in, long blonde hair, shocking blonde hair. Now I don't know where it went, but it apparently that changes as you travel and age. But blonde, long hair. And this little kid didn't have any idea. I mean, I went on the little school bus. Everybody would throw up because of the diesel fumes. I remember this so vividly. And I was taught by these Indians who really taught you math. I mean, it was strict, strict, strict. And I don't know if they were even harder on me because I was white. I was the token one. And this little kid, little Oli Oli Tip Tip, would come up. He spat on me because he didn't know what I was. And that's kind of a blessing. Like, I don't know what you are, but I better kind of bless you so nothing bad happens. Um, he hit me. He would jump up and hit me over the head because I was taller than him. And in his tribe, the Maasai tribe, the women shave their heads and the men have long braided red hair, which is made pretty much with cow manure and red mud and everything, these braids. So he didn't understand what is this, right? And eventually he hit me so bad I just turned around and smacked him back. I got expelled from nursery school because I hit the Minister of Home Affairs' son. I don't know what that is as a kid. I'm like, just stop hitting me, man. And that to me is this lesson. And people always go, wow, okay, so this was like racism. I'm like, no, it's just this is an understanding of not understanding. This
Yeah.
kid had fear of me. And I'm going, I'm new to this country. I don't know what any of you guys are all speaking with clicks and things. And I don't know what any of this means, but this was brutal. But we all got along mostly, that was the epitome of fear and acting out in fear.
Mhm.
And I think most of this is fear.
Yeah.
All of it is fear of and not understanding.
Mhm.
And I think books play a massive role in what you're saying about characters like movies, all of it. Books, characters are important. We're
Mhm.
tired of the slimline typical character, the model, that
Yeah.
doesn't ever eat. We want real people doing real things. That's why I watch British stuff because they're characters. And you see some strong women, strong men get through
Yeah.
things that you're like, oh, wow, you can just be yourself. And we've all been there in all of those scenarios or stories at some point. You identify with that, right? So yeah, I think it's fear all the way. It's fear. And the more our society doesn't have that authenticity that you talk about, especially for writers and craft, the worse it gets. If
Yeah.
you're only reading Cosmopolitan magazine, I'm not knocking the magazine. I whatever, what you know what I mean? You're not getting a true perspective.
Yeah. You're just limiting your experience, and that doesn't,
Yeah.
you shouldn't have that experience at all. It just means you should have more than that experience. You should
Mhm.
you should look at things widely, and then you can make a informed choice on how you want to be.
And
And
vote.
yeah, but I just yeah, I mean, it's like, other people being different from you like doesn't do anything to you.
It's exciting.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
get to learn something new.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I think this is cool. I think it's so important now. So you're saying that you may do a novella after this. So you're going to write another series like after this? What are you
Yeah.
feeling on all of your
So
writing?
the
And how
novella.
did you, what, by the way, before getting into this, what led you to write this, like this series?
Okay, so the first book was Ugly, and that was the one that almost entirely autobiographical in terms of the things that happened. It was kind of a thought experiment. It's like I put myself growing up now. And I had recently learned about the concept of being non-binary, and I just felt like that my story was something that other people have experienced and are experiencing, and that it's worth telling because I really hadn't read any books um, that talk. I mean, there's very few books out about non-binary characters. There are starting to be more, but at the time, I hadn't ever really read. I hadn't ever found anything that was like my story, and I
Mm.
thought, this is worth telling. And also, I was kind of not sure. I was still sort of exploring the ideas myself, really.
Hmm.
And so when I wrote the book, I sort of came to understand a lot of things. But that's why I wrote the first one. And then I knew it was powerful. And so I wanted to keep the story going. And I was also curious to see where Nick would go. And because I didn't know. And so the second book really was truly fiction, like all of
Hmm.
it. And I mean, there's a few characters and settings that are kind of from my experience, but I mean, the story and the characters are all fiction.
Hmm.
And the same is true for Ugliest. And so that's why it was just sort of really interesting to write, because I was like learning. It made me feel good because it made me feel like, if I were a teenager now, maybe I would have these same experiences. And then in the third book, where Nick really comes out as being brave and standing up for important things, that felt empowering to me too, because I
Hmm.
felt like, I would have risked things too if I had had the opportunity. I mean, Nick takes risks to do the right thing, and that's empowering.
Yep.
So for me, it was kind of just an interesting journey to just write the series. But that's why I started it, is I just felt like I'd never seen my story told, and I was convinced it was worth telling.
Yeah. And if you don't, then someone else will do it for you.
Yeah,
And that's what I was thinking about. Society believes in things according to propaganda that's been put out there by marketers, right?
yeah,
So let's look at cigarette smoking when they started targeting women. First, women are not supposed to smoke. Then it's sexy to smoke, right? So the tobacco industry made all this money off of women smoking and wear
yeah,
the long gloves that probably have yellow stains on them. But anyway, and then the women have yellow teeth. I don't know, just kidding. But you know, here comes this marketing ploy, right?
yeah,
Or then look at reefer madness. Okay, so all of that is somebody didn't want, well, that's a whole theory too about why anti-weed or pot or whatever you want to call it, that was a whole, the Hearst family is part of that, not wanting, anyway, that's a whole rabbit hole that I'll behave on. um, but this is massive uh, propaganda that
yeah,
people just went and believed into.
yeah,
So I find like what you're writing, and authors who do that, musicians, anybody in the arts that are, and journalists that are putting this out, it's almost like who's going to get the more correct stuff, authentic stuff that is out there, it's crucial, because all this other propaganda on news channels and things like that gets pushed out there, so people just automatically believe a headline or believe
yeah,
this and that, and so everything they believe in is completely phony, and
yeah,
so it spreads, and so if we don't have anything counteracting it, that just keeps spreading. So it's almost like this is the disease and here's the cure. So we need you guys, gals, they, them, whatever. God, I'm going to get into trouble to do this. That was so old school to say guys and gals, wasn't it?
yeah. Actually, it's kind of a
That's
funny
pretty
thing
funny.
in the book, because the kids, Nick and their friends, are actively trying to not use the term guys, even though it's so natural.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of funny. But so I think, well, so you were asking
Yeah.
kind of a little bit. And so the novella, so my original plan had actually been to write Nick's sophomore year, then Uglier was going to be their junior year at the boarding school, but then it got too big, and I ended it at Christmas, and it was still a huge book. And so then the Ugliest was originally going to be senior year, but now it's just second semester of junior year. And so I was like, what's the story going to be for senior year? And that's why I thought, I think this story just ends here, the
Mm.
core part of the series. but Nick is going to go to the Glasgow School of Art, and I want to write that. So that's what the novella will be. And I don't know what the story is going to be. I have some ideas, but I don't think it's not going to be quite as intense. It's going to be mostly positive, and it might even be a romance, a little light love story. I'm not sure
That's
yet.
cool.
But I actually have a tour scheduled to tour the Glasgow School of Art while I'm there
Oh, well, now it's happening.
in August. So I'm excited, and I'm gonna, like see if I can maybe get emails of the tour, the student tour guides, so I can ask questions. But anyways, that's what I want to do, because Nick had such a great time in Ugly in Glasgow. And the point is, that what they realize in that book in Ugly, um, and the realization doesn't change, is that they need to leave
Mm,
for mental health purposes. They're not really safe in Oklahoma. And
that's
I
sad.
mean, unfortunately, and I know some people are like, yeah, but if you stay and you change things, but Nick doesn't want to be a politician. Nick doesn't want to spend all their time, trying to improve things. They want to make art. And why should everybody who's in sort of a marginalized community be obligated to spend time lifting that community up? Why can't other people do that? What if they want to make art or they want to do things in their life? Everybody else who's not in a marginalized community can go do whatever they want. I mean, this is probably one of the reasons that we have a lot more male, huge male authors than women, because they're not taking care of the kids. They're just doing what they want to do.
Exactly.
Their
Women,
wives are
yeah.
doing all the work. So anyways, I mean, so I'm like, marginalized people in marginalized communities shouldn't feel responsible for all the work. Um, but if they want to do it, that's great. And if they want to support it, that's great too. But like, I don't know. So anyways, Nick wants to go have a good life. And so they're gonna go to the Glasgow School of Art. And so that's gonna be fun to write. And
Cool. So this
yeah.
is, I know you're thinking of, but basically it's happening.
I'm planning to do it, but it's just life sometimes gets in the way. And right now, I'm actually working on a nonfiction project for a tech press,
Oh,
and so
wow.
I'm not working on any fiction at all right now.
Technical stuff?
Yeah, I'm a data scientist, and it's about data
Oi,
science. So that is due in December, and it's all I can do right now. So but
wow.
there are two other stories that one of them I have like a third draft of, and it needs some changes, but the core story is there. And it's a YA, kind of paranormal suspense a little bit. And then I
Oh,
have another story that I'm going to write about a couple of girls who or go to a school that's haunted, a high school that's
oh,
haunted.
cool. I like
They,
all the
they do
hauntings
some
and
stuff with that. So,
paranormals. Cool.
I'm both of those stories, are sort of paranormal. It's not like, there's no vampires. It's not like to that level, but ghosts basically, or some sort of
Cool.
supernatural stuff. So
Cool.
those are sort of my next like full novel projects that I'm working on in
Wow.
theory, thinking
You
about.
do a lot of writing then, like a
Yeah, I
lot.
do actually. I mean, I'm lucky in that, I mean, I don't have a family. I don't have a lot of responsibilities. So when I'm not doing my day job, I'm pretty much working on writing in some way. It doesn't always mean literally sitting there putting words
Hmm.
on a page, but like just any aspect of writing, which involves a lot of marketing and social media and all those things. So I'm lucky that I do actually have a lot of time I can spend doing it, and I enjoy it. So pretty much like I don't even really watch TV because I don't really have time. So
Well, if you do, you've got to watch BritBox stuff. You got characters there,
yeah,
and how people deal with stuff. That's the thing. Yeah, no, no. Well, I love that you're writing a ton, but going from the data science, I'm like, okay, even that my brain goes, no, no. That's
yeah,
heavy.
it's interesting because I'm hopeful that that might actually make me some money, because unfortunately most indie authors don't make
Yeah,
money.
it's
I
it's
mean,
hard.
I lose money on every book I put out. And the hope is that that will change one day.
Hmm.
But so that's why I have to prioritize something that might actually be, you know,
Sure, sure. I mean, that's like, in the arts, it's not, we don't have, and the whole thing of, oh, a publisher is going to come and give me this, $1 million check and do all the marketing is just, there are people who get that, like the big fancy record deal is just this very small percent. and
Yeah.
then you're kind of tied to them, I think. I'm not sure how all that part
Yeah,
works,
it's
but I
different.
think with what you're writing, I think you need free and creative free license
Yeah.
to do what you need to write because you
Yeah,
don't want somebody telling you, no,
exactly.
that
And
would be messy.
that was kind of my experience early on because the publishing industry claims they want diverse stories. They're supposedly interested in LGBTQ stories, but they're still policing all of it, and they're still publishing only the stories that they think they want to publish. So, like I
Mm.
have a a writer I know who is Asian American, and she has a romance where she has Chinese American characters who don't speak Chinese. Their parents do, but the characters
Yeah.
don't. And a New York editor said that was not realistic and
Oh,
turned
I
it.
had to just watch my language right there for a second.
I know. Everybody knows that a lot of children of immigrants don't speak the languages of
No, they have no
parents.
clue.
Everybody knows that.
And
But
they
this
don't
New
even
York
want to.
editor didn't.
They don't
And
even want to.
that's racism. I mean, that was discrimination. They turned it down because they said it wasn't realistic. And so I see the same thing. I tried to sell Ugly to agents. I had one agent who hadn't read any of it. It was just a pitch. So I just kind of given a verbal pitch for the book, told me that it was wrong that Nick wasn't using they them pronouns at the end of the book. No, it's not.
It's a
Like,
learning
it's
thing.
unsafe.
It's a
So
yeah,
yeah,
it's a learning thing. It's not it's a gradual.
exactly. And that's part of it too. I mean, very few people just instantly one day start using they them pronouns without a bunch of lead up in their
Oh my
head.
gosh,
Maybe other people don't know,
it is
but
so hard to
yeah,
even understand how to write it without because
yeah,
it I mean, is Grammarly going to take you down?
yeah, it is true. But so yeah, so I mean, even I was rejected wrongly. I mean, if this person had read the book, they would have understood why Nick wasn't using they them, but they still said no because they thought that wasn't the story they wanted to hear.
I have a friend whose pronoun is it
Mm,
because she
yeah.
can be I'm it.
I mean, you can do whatever you want.
You
It's kind of
can.
one of those that like it has such a derogatory sense to it in a lot of
Mm.
use, but if that's what you like, I mean, there are other
Oh, she
pronouns
didn't mean
that
it that way. No. And no, it's just she was just like, no matter what you do, you're gonna get nailed, you
yeah,
know.
exactly. I mean, like the use of they them for singular person has been in use in English for hundreds of years. It's just only used when you don't know the gender of the person.
Hmm.
But grammatically, we already use it that way. It's
Yeah, that's
it
true.
feels different, but it's not new. It's
Hmm.
just a new way of applying it
Incorporating
to
it. Yeah.
people. And so that's what, because but if you don't like, if you literally meet somebody and you don't know what their gender is, that used to be nerve-wracking because you'd be like, well, which pronoun do I use? Just use they them now when you're talking about them. And even if they do use different pronouns, if you're talking about them to someone else, you haven't necessarily misgendered
You've been
them.
inclusive.
Exactly. And it's just like it's not as hard as people think it is. But that's not to say it isn't hard. I know it is. And like I said, even I make the mistake, and it's certainly not about not approving. But it's just not, I mean, it's harder, I think, with the new pronouns, like they have ones that are like they them without the th, so like just an e, which would be a, an
Oh, wait.
air, an m, and those are different, those are new, but they them is not new. It's just a new additional usage of it.
Mm.
And so, but I mean, we don't know where we're in 100 years.
It may
you
all go out the window.
I mean, yeah, like it'd be great if English just used they, them for everyone, if we just didn't even have she and he. I mean, why not? English could function like that. It would lose
Yeah,
nothing.
it's just like that little kid kept looking under my shirt, and I think that's why I hit him because he wanted to see if I was male or female.
Yeah.
And I'm like I'm 4 years old. Like that doesn't. I don't have boobies
Really,
yet. It's like, and no wonder I hit him. But I didn't mean to. I just smacked him back. You're gonna hit
yeah.
me. It's a reaction. But
Yeah.
then, yeah. But I mean but that just shows the example of fear.
Yeah, no, fear really is the heart of all of this. And but But like, my response to fear is not to try to force everybody to do things a different way so that it doesn't scare me anymore. I mean, that's just like, if I don't like it, I just won't do it. I mean,
Mhm.
like all the book banning. If you don't like a
Oh my
book,
God. Oh my God.
don't
The
read
book
it.
banning is insane.
Why are you going to stop,
Talk
me
about,
from
well,
reading something? I mean, like, it's just ridiculous. And
we're
I know it's
going backwards in the wrong
we
ways,
really
big
are.
time.
I mean, there's actually a really hilarious. There's a book called Ban This Book, and it's a middle grade about a girl who finds out she can't read her favorite book. I think I haven't actually read it. I actually do own it, but I haven't read it yet. And that book has been banned because it put book banning in a negative light. Yes.
Now, what
So
about the things like in schools? It's getting weird now too.
yeah.
I mean, it's, yeah.
And all it takes is one person to complain and they just go for it. I'm like, why is it one person saying a book is bad? It is enough to get it removed
See,
when
but
like
that, but
hundreds
this,
of people want it there.
but this, the thing to me is why it's so important to there's the propaganda side and then the good people, the good days and thems need to counteract that propaganda with a lot of good stuff and say,
Yeah.
you know, um, that's, I mean, it's the only way. It's like when I look at, you know, negative reviews online, right? One of the ways to get rid of them is just to get a bunch of good ones and bury them,
Hmm.
you know? And that's, that's just kind of the same thing. Negative press, gives you
Yeah.
press, but then you need to stifle it with good.
Yeah.
That's the thing in life. And so that's kind of how I feel about what's going on in the world is just like people are very controlling.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is people feel like, oh, we're being forced to do this and that. No, you're not. You can say
Yeah.
they and them if you want or not. That's up to you. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean you're necessarily rude, but if someone identifies as that, then maybe you want to because it's like saying Mr. or Ms. Oh my God, I hate the MS thing. Ms. I'm a Ms. I don't want to
I
be a
mean,
Ms. I don't want it.
is it anybody's business whether you're married or not? Why does that change who you are? I mean, that's the
Oh
reason
yeah,
for that.
because women, yeah, that this was a whole thing against women, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's
Now,
like
doctors
suddenly,
may want to know your race and male, female, not, or whatever. I
yeah,
don't know if it goes according to our makeup, right? Or
yeah,
whatever, like medically. But
yeah.
anything other than that, no. Who cares? You
Yeah,
know?
I mean, this whole idea that you need to make other people be like you is just foreign to me. I
And
mean,
how boring.
exactly. I mean, like, but that's just where we're going right now, and we have to stop it. But I'm not sure that we will. So,
No. Well,
yeah,
everyone, go get Ugliest, but get the whole trilogy, like get the whole series. I think that is cool. And I think, we've got to look at voting this year. Please do not vote.
yes, it's so important.
Everyone's got to vote.
It's important on a national scale, but it's in
Regionally.
some ways it's
Oh,
even more important on a local
I
scale.
agree with you, but there's some laws that are going to like,
Yeah, the problem is like
this is a big one this year.
this is
This is
really.
really big. I look at it also environmentally, and
Hmm.
that is a big one. So, yeah, let's all vote and let's all just, learn a bit and have some kindness in our lives. I don't like the word tolerance either because you're tolerating no, don't,
It has a sense of judgment with it. It's that
doesn't
you
it? It
through,
does.
but you're allowing it. And
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, all right, I'll let you sit at this table, but not that one, but you're at least in the establishment. you know? So yeah, we just get over it. But thank you so much, Kelly. It's been a
yeah,
pleasure
thank
having
you.
you on the show. Everyone, again, kellyvincent.net. Ugliest is out August 13th, 2024. You can pre-order it now and on all those great places. So, and of course, go ask your bookstore to carry books. How about that? All right. And libraries too. Thanks so much, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.